Hey everyone, it's Jeremy with Teletone. With the release of our newest synth instrument, Oracle, I thought it would be fun to dive into the making of some of my favorite presets. I feel like showing you how they were made might inform how you can continue to make your own user presets inside Oracle. So let's jump on in. And I think the way I want to do this is I'll play a little bit with the preset, then we're going to strip everything down to the source and kind of turn things back on one by one. So this preset is called Doubt. So this is somewhere between a pad and a keys preset. Let's strip this down to its bare components. So we have this sawtooth from the SH-101. And you might be able to hear some little pitch discrepancies. That's because we have the vintage knob turned up. You will also notice that we have a really slow attack on this. The way it loads is probably closer to this. But we have a slow attack on the filter and on the volume. Let's turn on oscillator B. We have this Sonic 6 XY ring mod, and we'll solo that. This one's a bit quieter than the other one, and you can see that the octave knob is turned up 2 octaves, and then tune is dialed up a perfect fourth. So when I'm playing E flat here, it's going to play A flat over here. And something that kind of ties in with the name Doubt is that you can't really resolve this. Like when I turn everything back on, when I was playing that a minute ago and it's supposed to resolve on this A flat chord, you'll hear that it doesn't really resolve because of the fourth involved. You never get that full resolution. We want to hear this note. But it's going to add this other note on top of it that makes it feel like it never quite resolves. So that's kind of a fun little behind the scenes of like why I chose to tune that up a fourth. So together, this is how they sound. Let's look at the movement, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the effects on so I can see what's controlling what. It looks like on movement number 1, we have a custom shape. And this is something that was just drawn in, and that is being applied to the high pass filter and also the volume on oscillator B. And when I play this, you're going to be able to see the movement happening a little bit here. So you can see that this is boosting the volume of oscillator B. And then we have this high pass filter and sub kind of meandering around a little bit, kind of coming in and out slowly. So that's movement 1. Movement 2 is assigned to tune on B. Now, this is already tuned up a fourth, but I believe that this movement, yeah, you can see that the depth is turned way down. It's probably on like 1%. This is just to give it a little bit of pitch warble. And when we look at this, it's a similar custom shape. It might be the same one from movement 1. So you can see it's giving oscillator B just a little bit of vibrato there. I don't believe that that is attached to anything else. I hope I'm not missing something. Movement number 3 is attached to tune on A. Depth is also turned almost all the way down, so this is also going to be a little vibrato. This one appears to be much more subtle. So that is just barely moving. And then movement number 4 is attached to the mod wheel, which is controlling the cutoff. Now I can see that with this at 12 o'clock and the depth turned up pretty high. This is going to make some pretty drastic changes in the sound when I use the mod wheel. And that is the preset called Doubt. This preset is called Rising Tides. Turn off the effects, turn off the movement, turn off B, and let's see, on oscillator A we have MS-20 saw, and it looks like we have a slow attack on the volume, and then a little bit of a fade in on the filter. And the release is a little bit longer too. Octave and tune, pan, those are all normal. Let's look at oscillator B, and we have a digital saw over here that is pitch shifted up 2 octaves. Long fade in on the volume here, and then a fade in on the filter here as well. Not using the vintage knob or the glide, so let's hear these 2 oscillators together with nothing else. Okay, not a lot happening. Let's go ahead and turn on movement. We can see that movement number 1 is attached to the pan at least, and I see there's stuff I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the effects too because movement 1 is attached to the sub. All right, so this is not tempo synced. It's set really slow with the depth turned up pretty far. And actually, let me turn off these other ones so we can just solo the 1 movement. So it's causing B to slowly pan left and right, and it's causing the sub to slowly fade in and out. And we have sine waves selected here, and this is going to oscillator A. So this will be working in conjunction with whatever is happening on the A side. But it does share the movement with the B pan. Movement number 2 is attached to the tune on A, and it doesn't look like anything else. And it's causing some little glitchy effects. I'm using this pitch warble custom shape. So if you listen closely, and I'll turn off B, you're just going to hear a little bit of warble happen here and there. So pretty subtle, but just wanted a little bit of like something like analog feeling about it. It doesn't appear that 2 is attached to anything else. Let's go to 3. And I think that this is where the main event is happening. So this is attached to tune on B. And this is going to be, if you remember when I was playing, it sounded like there was something that was constantly rising, like forever. Everything was going up and up and up without ever coming back down. That is from this shape. This is what it looks like if you wanted to watch the movement. You can hear how it goes up, and I have retrigger on because as you are playing more notes, it creates the illusion that it goes up and up and up forever. I'm going to turn up the rate for a second to show you that it doesn't. It eventually stops if you were to just hold 1 note. But when we turn that down basically as slow as it will go, you're probably hitting more notes in between, so it keeps re-triggering and giving this impression that things only go up and never back down. That is Rising Tides. I want to look at this one called Eyes in a Crowd. It sounds like this. It sounds like there is a bunch of delays happening, but there is no delay on this. So let's explore how we're getting this sound. For starters, we have this source loaded called Digital Home, and that is panned all the way left. Not a lot happening on the filter. It is mellowed out a little bit. You can see with this amount slider. This envelope is connected to the B envelope, so that will be the same. Let's go ahead and turn on B, which is also using Digital Home. And this is panned all the way right, but to my eye, both of these sides are set exactly the same with their knob positions and with their envelope, which means that I am probably loading them up, but doing different movements with the different sides. So turning A and B on both is probably just going to make it louder. Using just a little bit of the vintage knob here, by the way. So most of the magic of this is going to be happening with the movement and the effects. Let's turn on everything, but go through the movements one by one. Movement 1 is attached to the pan side of A. And we have this sawtooth LFO happening, and if you watch, you can see how it sounds like it's almost re-triggering the note, which is where we're getting part of this delay sound. Going to 2, this is going to pan B. And it looks similar to 1, but it's faster. So let's solo the B side. Same shape, different rhythm. On movement 3, we have the same shape, but it's being attached to the volume on B. And then you can also see and hear that there's a lot of delay happening with this LFO. It does not come in right away. Watch the indicator here. I would anticipate the same thing is going to be happening on 4, but to the A side, and it is. Same shape, different rate. But this is also on a delay. All right, movement 5 was turned on, but I don't believe it's actually attached to anything. So here's movement 6, which is attached to the cutoff. And then we have a custom shape drawn in here, which is kind of, I don't remember what we call it, like a half triangle down, something. This is attached to the cutoff. Let's see and hear what this is doing. So there are a lot of different things that are creating this delay type sound. This is the only one that is affecting A and B with the exact same timing, is this last one we have on the cutoff, which kind of glues it together just a little bit. And so you put all that together and this is the effect. It's a very pretty one. That one is called Eyes in a Crowd. Let's hear this preset graduation lead. And as you might guess, we are in mono mode for this, using a bit of glide, and then the vintage knob is turned up. If we turn off glide, it's not as lead sounding. So that glide definitely helps it to feel more like a lead. And so on oscillator A, we have MS-20 saw detuned, and the volume envelope looking pretty normal, and same with the filter. Not a lot happening there. Let's hear what we have over on B. We have digital saw wide. Not much happening with volume pan, octave, or tune. And it looks like our envelopes were linked here, so not a lot going on with the filter volume on this side either. Let's turn them both on and listen. Turning the effects on, we're using some chorus, which I like to do. Actually, I didn't make this preset, Ryan made this one, but I also like to use chorus on a lot of the leads that I made. Some saturation, which just makes it a little bit grittier and not as digital sounding. Have some of the high end filtered out, no resonance, no high pass filter, and then it looks like the sub is going to A. Got a little bit of reverb happening, nothing going on with the noise. Let's go ahead and turn on the movement and look at that. Let's turn off 2 and 3. Movement 1 is going to pan on A, and I don't believe anything else. So let's solo A. This is going to pan left and right with a sine wave movement. Looks like we have a sine wave on 2 attached to the cutoff. So you hear that very smoothly opening up and closing. I don't believe that is attached to anything else. And then on 3, it looks like we have the mod wheel controlling the cutoff. So we have two different things, two different LFOs affecting the cutoff here. So this mod wheel is going to take the entire knob and turn it up and down, while the movement number 2 is like oscillating back and forth. So let me just put these two things together and show you how this works. So a really clever idea by Ryan to attach a sine wave and the mod wheel to the cutoff for some really cool effects. Let's turn 1 back on so we can get that panning back and forth kind of sound. And let's hear this again. So that is graduation lead. Let's jump into this preset, long divisions rounded, and this has quite a bit going on, so I'll try to move through this relatively quickly. Here's how this sounds. So you can hear the rhythm starts as one thing and then morphs into another thing. Turn off the effects, turn off the movement. What do we have on A? We have Model D saw. We have vintage turned up, which you were probably hearing. We want a little bit of those tuning discrepancies in here. Just dirty it up a little bit. We have a long decay on the filter, so eventually this is going to filter out the high end. That is kind of important for this one because as the rhythm is changing, the tone is also changing. On the B side, we have Model D Saw 2. It's panned a little bit to the right. Oh, I think A is panned a little bit to the left. And the envelopes are linked, so this has that long filter decay also. Putting these together, they sound like this. Which is not a bad sound in and of itself. That's kind of interesting to begin with. Let's turn on movement, but we'll go through these one at a time. And I'll turn on the effects so we can actually see what things are going to. So movement number 1, we have a sine wave attached to the volume on A and also the resonance. And both A and B are turned on for the filter section, by the way. So we can see it's a pretty fast rate. We're on a 16th note here. And also we do have some chorus and reverb, by the way. You probably noticed that. So there's one rhythm. When we go to movement 2, it is also a sine wave. This is set to a half note. Depth is turned up a ways, and this is controlling the noise, as well as the pan for oscillator A. We can listen to it and see what it's doing here. Movement 3 is another sine wave. This is going to volume on oscillator B. So this seems like it's going to be the same as what was happening on 1, just a little more depth on this one. But this is kind of a repeat of 1, but for the B side. We have some movement on the pan as well, so this is similar to 2. So I'm kind of just doing a similar, almost identical thing to the B side here. Movement number 5 we have attached to the cutoff, and this is a triangle shape. And you can see it didn't start right away. That's because the delay is turned up quite a bit here. So we have like around 4,000 milliseconds of fade-in time here. And then when we go to 6, we have a sine wave that is attached to the reverb and delay and the resonance. And so to kind of recap, we have some motion happening, like some faster motion happening on the volume that's kind of giving that fast wavery LFO sound. We have some slower panning happening that's attached to movements number 2 and 4. And then we have this other movement that is slower that's attached to the triangle. This is set to a half note triplet, which is kind of where the name comes from. So the depth is turned up on number 5 because I want this one, I want the movement from number 5 to overtake the earlier rhythms and become the dominant sound. This is going to be happening as the filter is fading out. A lot of moving pieces on this one, but let's go ahead and listen to this one more time. So that is long divisions rounded. Let's go to this preset called Bells 3. I made 4 different Bells presets for Oracle, and here's what this sounds like. So let's turn off all the effects and all the movement. And what we have here is digital sine clean. And then you can hear I have a really long release on this. I'm not holding the pedal down. And then not a ton happening with the filter really. Then let's go over to B. It's the MS-20 Square. This one's turned down a bit and then tuned up a fifth, I believe. Oh, I didn't mention that A, this is tuned up 2 octaves, and then this is set to the normal default. And I remember when I was trying to make these bells presets, I wasn't really getting anywhere until I remembered, oh yeah, with bells, there's these really strong overtones, so I need to be adding like fifths in there somewhere. So that's what this is doing. All right, let's turn on the movement. And it looks like we have 2 different types of movement happening. And then movement tab is happening on volume and pan for the A oscillator. And number 2 is going to volume and pan on B oscillator. Let's start with A. So just some little subtle vibrations here going left, right, and then also in the amplitude of the sound. B is going to be doing the same thing. And then both of these are just using the sine wave. So we'll turn on the effects, and you can see we have a bit of saturation, nothing from color, and then we have a lot of resonance being used, and the high pass filter is turned up. We do not have any movement attached to anything down here. We also have the sub, which is going to A, which is going to reinforce that fundamental. We're using the square sub on that. And then there's a bit of reverb going to both A and B. And that is basically it. And it sounds like this effects section is doing quite a bit to help it sound more bell-like. The combination of the saturation, the resonance, and then this sub square oscillator that's happening. You kind of lose a lot of that bell sound when you turn off the effects. So that is bells 3. Let's look at this preset, Witches Behind the Wall. Strip it down. On the A side, we have Moog D triangle saw 1. This is shifted up 2 octaves. And then we have a slow attack on the filter. Doesn't sound like much on its own. Here's the B side. This also has a slow attack on the filter side. We have our vintage knob turned up. That's going to give us some little pitch variation. Together, A and B sound like this. All right, so let's look at the movement section now. Movement number 1, we have attached to the cutoff, and I've made a custom shape here that's kind of fading that in. And I already had the filter fading in with the attack, but when I made this, I must have been wanting it to do it even a little bit more drastically and with some resonance on it. So when you turn up this resonance, it's going to affect the sound in a way that this filter cannot, because this filter does not have any resonance connected to it. So now let's listen to that swell in. And you can see that happening too when you watch the little ball move across this track. When we go to 2, we can see that 2 is connected to tune on A and B. And you might miss this, but there is a little bit of a delay here. I don't actually want that vibrato to start happening until the filter has faded in. It's kind of a very Tom York trick to delay the LFO that's attached to your tune. So we've had that attached to A and B, but we also have it attached to the sub. So the sub, which is using the sine wave oscillator, that's going to warble just a little bit too, in unison with these other ones. And then movement number 3 is attached to the mod wheel and the volume on A. So we can expect that as I turn the mod wheel up and down, it's going to control the volume of A. And we do have the vintage knob turned up, which of course is going to create some instant vibe. But that is the preset Witches Behind the Wall, a reference to the movie Suspiria. Here's a preset called Karma. And this one is using the arpeggiator, but for now, let's turn everything off and get down to just the sources. We're using the Sonic 6 Square. Not a lot there that you can even hear. And when we look on the filter side, we can see why, because this decay is turned down almost all the way. And then things looking pretty normal on the volume side of that envelope. Nothing going on with the pan, octave, or tune. So let's hop over to the B side. Sonic 6 XY pitch ring mod. Same thing here. Not even much you can hear. You can see that the decay is turned way down. And then, so we're using the volume side more than the filter side for B. And then we can see that we're up an octave and then slightly detuned sharp a bit. So that is how it sounds with just the envelopes and the raw forms of the oscillators. We are using the glide knob and the vintage knob is turned up. All right, so let's turn movement on. And I actually noticed this getting ready for this video that we have movement 1 turned on and it's actually not attached to anything. So we can just turn that off. It's not going to do anything. And then for movement 2, we have the depth turned up all the way. The rate is set to a whole note. And then this is attached to the tune on oscillator B, which is pitched up an octave. And this is going to be giving us just some little pitch variations up high. So movement is not connected to any of the filter or tone stuff, which is also a big part of the sound. Let's turn on the arpeggiator so we can hear this movement number 2 a little bit better. Now let me turn it off. So it just makes this oscillator B just sound a little more quirky, a little more mischievous. So let's look at the ARP now. We have some variations in the length and then some variations in the filter as well. So you can hear that that kind of kills the vibe when we just turn the length up all the way. I'll reload it here. If we turn this filter all the way up, you can hear that this is doing a lot of the work for this preset too. So don't forget to use the filter and length lanes, because in this particular preset, it kind of makes all the difference here. So that is the preset Karma. Let's open up this preset called Smooth Chain. This has kind of a side chaining effect to it. The preset sounds like this. And at first glance, you might think it's using the arpeggiator, but it is not. And so let's explore how we are getting this sound without the arpeggiator. Turn the effects off, turn the movement off, turn oscillator B off. And we have Model D Triangle 1. And it looks like the volume is all the way down. That is because I'm assuming that, yes, this is attached to an LFO. So we're not going to hear anything right off the bat. Let's hear B. And on B, we have none selected. So we also have no sound. So the A and B sources, when you turn everything else off, make no sound. Worth mentioning that we are in mono mode for this one. Let's go ahead and turn on the movement section and see if we can get some sound. So it looks like movement number 1 is attached to the volume like we suspected, and it's using a shape that is going to fade in. And when you look at the little ball on this track, you'll be able to see what's happening as well as hear it. And this is set to a quarter note rhythm, and it's fading in to where it's happening on the offbeats, which is important for this because we want the side chain effect. So we want to make sure that this is happening on off beats. And it looks like movement 3 is attached to something from the effects section. So let's go ahead and turn that on. Movement number 3 is a square shape with the depth turned all the way up. This is also on a quarter note rhythm, and it's attached to the sub. The sub is using the sine wave, and the sub is going to oscillator B, which is where we had none selected because I don't want this sub layered with anything else. So this is all just controlling the sub. Let's solo that. And you can see that this rhythm is kind of contrary to the other rhythms. So this is happening on the strong beats. And this sub is so powerful that it's kind of naturally sidechaining this noise a little bit. And when the sub goes back down, you're able to hear that noise come through a bit more. But if I turn the sub all the way down, you can hear that the noise is actually constant. Adding the saturation and drive also probably has to do with it. It has a way of kind of compressing things a bit when you turn up the saturation and drive. So there's not a lot else to this. Let's go ahead and turn everything else on. So we have the sub on a square LFO that is kind of emphasizing the strong beats. We have another LFO kind of fading in oscillator A on the off beats. And so that's how these are working together. And so that's how I made the preset called Smooth Chain. Pedal pulse. This one's kind of an interesting one that I thought would be kind of cool to break down. It's kind of an ARP, kind of a bass. And this uses the arpeggiator, but let's turn that off, turn the effects off, turn the movement off, and get back to the original source here. We are in mono mode, as you can see. So on oscillator A, we have Sonic 6 square, pan just a little bit to the left. Not much happening with the filter that you're going to really notice. A little bit of a slow release here. Nothing with octave and tune. On oscillator B, we have the DFAM square, which you can barely hear at the moment because we have the decay turned way down on the filter. This is panned slightly to the right and an octave lower. You can see the volume's turned up a bit here. And now let's just kind of turn everything on except for the arpeggiator. Let's look at movement number 1, which is using this reverse saw, and it's attached to the cutoff. So that's a big part of the sound. And this is, the cutoff is attached to A and B. We have our sub turned up and going to A. Let's turn on movement number 2. And so this looks like we have a custom shape happening. It's a ramp up. It's tempo synced. Depth is turned down a bit. And then this is attached to drive and saturation. And then also tune. So you can hear for the second half of the measure, it's pushing it sharp. And as it goes sharp, it's getting just a little bit dirtier too. And that is all the movement that's happening. We just have this cutoff reverse saw movement, and then we have something happening with we have this custom shape that is affecting the tune on both oscillators, and then the drive and saturation. So it gets sharp and it gets dirtier as it continues through the pattern. So let's look at what the arpeggiator is doing. So we have 8 steps drawn in. We have some things happening with length and with filter. And I feel like these are easier just to demonstrate rather than explain. So let's pretend that we had the length going all the way up and the filter going all the way up. It's a very, very different sound. And again, if we filled in these steps, not nearly as much rhythm. So again, I'm using this velocity, length, filter to create more movement in the sound. So let me reload this. So that's what the arpeggiator is doing, and that is pedal pulse. Let's do ghost chatter. Even though I feel like I pointed to this in the walkthrough, I don't think that I completely dissected it the way that I want to. So here's what it sounds like. A lot to get to on this one. So movement off, effects off. Let's go to A. Sonic 6, saw resonant os. That's the main keys sound that we're hearing. On the filter side, we have a really long decay here. So you hear it very slowly filtering out all that high end until it gets to its resting point, which would be 0. We have the vintage knob turned up, which creates some little pitch variations that make it sound a little more vintage, a little more vibey. Let's turn on B. Using a little bit of the Sonic 6 saw resonant mod, it's turned up an octave, and it has a very slow attack. The attack is slow on the filter side as well. So let's hear these two together. So you can hear a little hint of where this is going. Let's go ahead and turn on movement, and we'll just go through these one at a time. I'll turn on the effects. So we see that movement number 1 is using a custom shape. It's this thing, this is labeled pitch envelope, even though I'm actually using it on the cutoff here. So you can hear, you can see and hear how it starts with the cutoff all the way up and then drops down to where the knob is set. I don't believe that that is attached to anything else. Movement number 2 is attached to the tune on oscillator B, and the depth is turned up all the way. I'm using a custom shape, and so we can anticipate with the depth all the way up and a pretty wild pattern that we're going to get a pretty wild sound from this. We'll solo it. So this is, we're starting to get closer to the ghost chatter that the name is referring to. Let's turn oscillator A back on. Okay, let's see what's on 3. And we have another custom shape with some very jagged lines here. Depth is turned up all the way, and this is attached to the cutoff and high pass filter. Notice that this is only on the B side. So once again, we are trying to make this B side, I guess this is the ghost side. We have the octave turned up, but also we are attaching this LFO to the octave. So it's going to be whipping up and down octaves as well as doing some pretty crazy stuff with the cutoff and high pass filter. So let's watch these. So once again, turning these off. Some pretty wild sounds there. Okay, let's go to movement 4. This is attached to pan. We're using just a sine wave on this one. Because I wanted that ghost chatter to be kind of moving back and forth, not static in one place. And that is all of the movement that is happening. And so when we put it all together again, most of this craziness happening on the B side. We get ghost chatter. So that was really fun. We have over 300 presets. I wasn't really sure which ones to do for this video, but those are some of my favorites. I tried to cover a variety of them, but we feel like informing you about our thought process of what we were thinking when we made these and how we made them may inform how you make your own presets, because that is something you can absolutely do with Oracle. Share them with friends, show them to us, tag us on Instagram. We want to hear what you're making. We are at Teletone Audio. Thank you so much for watching.